Driver gives homeless girl a lift. He wasn't ready for her unexpected repayment. The fog crept low, like ghostly fingers reaching across the rain-slicked highway. A big red truck groaned down that lonely road, its engine grumbling like an old man's bones. Behind the wheel sat Jermiah Carter, squinting through the windshield as the wipers swished against the drizzle. He'd been driving for hours. Another long night, another endless stretch of road. Just him, his lukewarm coffee, and the steady thump-thump of tires on pavement. The only company a man like him could count on. But then, something moved in the mist. Jermiah leaned forward, his heart squeezing tight. There, at the roadside, stood a girl. Young, maybe 20, but not dressed for a stroll. No, she wore a wedding gown, white once, now torn and filthy. No shoes, just bare feet sinking into the wet grass. She hugged herself against the cold, shivering like a leaf in the wind. Her hair, long and black, hung in wet ropes over her face. Mud smeared her dress. Scratches marked her arms and legs. She looked lost, not just from the storm, but from life itself. Jermiah hesitated for a moment. You hear things on the road, stories about tricks, about traps, worse, but this girl, the way her shoulders shook, the way her head hung low like all her tears had run dry, it tugged at his heartstrings. His truck came to a stop. The girl didn't move, didn't lift a hand, didn't even raise her head. Jermiah stepped down carefully, holding his hands where she could see them. "Miss?" he called softly, gentle as summer breeze. "Are you all right there?" The girl flinched at his voice, like a startled rabbit. A tiny whimper slipped through her cracked lips, but her feet stayed rooted to the ground. Up close, Jermiah saw the truth. Cheeks sunken from too many empty meals, lips turned blue by the biting cold. And there, caught in her knotted hair, a crushed flower, once pretty, now broken, like the dreams from her terrible day. "Can I help you?" Jermiah asked, softer now, like talking to a frightened child. Then she looked up. Oh, those eyes, wide as saucers, full of hurt, the kind of eyes that have seen too much pain, and can't quite believe they survived it. Her mouth opened. No words came, just a slow, shaky nod, heavy with shame. Without a word, Jermiah peeled off his thick flannel coat and wrapped it round her shaking shoulders. Her fingers grabbed hold tight, like a drowning woman clutching a rope. "Come ride with me," he offered, his voice rough but kind. "We'll find you some warmth and maybe a hot meal too." Gently now, he helped her climb up into the truck's worn cab, tucking blankets round her like a grandpa bundling a child. She folded herself small against the door. Jermiah cranked the heat up high, then handed over his snacks. A water bottle, a crinkly cracker pack. She ate like the starving, no crumbs left behind, and the quiet between them grew. No need for questions now, old Jermiah knew well. Some hurts run too deep for words. Sometimes the kindest thing is just to be there, to let the silence do the healing. The miles rolled by in quiet companionship until they passed a flickering gas station sign. Then, so softly Jermiah almost missed it, her voice broke the silence, fragile as a sparrow's song. "My name's Stacy," she whispered, each word sounding like it might crack. Jermiah turned his weathered face toward her, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Well now, Stacy," he said warmly, "I'm right pleased to make your acquaintance. Name's Jermiah." He kept his tone light, like he was greeting a neighbor over a garden fence rather than a broken-hearted girl on a rain-soaked highway. She attempted a smile, but it faltered like the last flame of a dying candle. Jermiah studied her for a moment, then asked the question as gently as stirring honey into tea. "Child, you running from something?" Tears shimmered in Stacy's eyes, but didn't fall. Her nod was barely perceptible. "My wedding," she rasped, the words scraping against her throat. "Today." Jermiah's grip on the steering wheel tightened until his knuckles stood white. Outside, Stacy's breath painted fleeting ghosts on the window glass. "He left me standing there," she continued, her voice hollow. "Told everyone I wasn't good enough. said marrying me was his biggest mistake. Jermiah's chest burned with quiet fury, but he stayed silent, letting her words find their way out. The worst came in halting whispers. Then he and his friends. A shudder ran through her. They laughed, Jermiah, made bets about how long before I'd come begging back. The cab filled with the kind of heavy silence that follows a church bell's last toll. So Stacy ran through fields of shame, down roads of despair, until her feet were numb and her wedding dress hung in tatters. She pulled the blanket tighter around her thin shoulders. "Maybe I deserved it," she murmured to her lap. "Maybe I'm just broken beyond fixing." The big truck rumbled into a quiet rest stop. His voice came out steady when he said, "Listen, girl, their cruelty says more about them than you. You ain't broken, just bruised, and bruises heal." Stacy lifted her eyes to his. Jermiah reached across and patted her hand, his calloused fingers gentle. "You ain't broken, girl," he said firmly. "Just bruised some, and bruises heal with time and care." With a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes, Jermiah nodded toward the diner. "What say we get some of those pancakes, with hot chocolate, my treat?" A single tear traced a shiny path down Stacy's cheek, but this one carried something different. Not just pain, but the first hint that maybe, just maybe, the frost in her heart might begin to melt. Without words, she nodded. Jermiah steadied Stacy as she stepped down from the truck cab. The poor girl wobbled in her bare feet, that ruined wedding dress fluttering about her legs, still drowning in Jermiah's flannel that hung clear past her fingertips. But something was different now. Her back straightened, her chin lifted a fraction higher. Inside the diner, every head swiveled their way. Of course they stared. When does a grizzled trucker walk in with a barefoot bride looking like she'd been tussling in ground? Jermiah paid no mind. He simply guided Stacy to a window booth. "2 farmers' breakfasts, he told the waitress with a kind smile, "and keep that syrup drizzling." When the plates arrived, steaming stacks of pancakes, eggs, sunny side up, crispy bacon, Stacy froze. Her hands fluttered uncertainly over the fork, as if she'd forgotten how a proper meal worked. Jermiah didn't make a fuss. He just dug into his eggs with gusto. Bit by bit, bite by bite, Stacy began to eat too. With each mouthful of warm food, with each glance around the cozy diner, you could almost see the weight sliding from her shoulders. Not all at once, but like snow melting in spring, gradual and sure. Jermiah let the quiet settle between them. He didn't pepper her with questions, didn't make her explain a thing. For the first time in goodness knows how long, Stacy simply existed. No running, no pleading, no begging forgiveness. Just sitting, warm, safe, and alive. And for now, that was everything. The diner hummed around them like a contented beehive, forks dancing on plates, coffee percolating its rich aroma, maple syrup sweetness hanging in the air. Outside, the rain had gentled to a misty sigh, yet Stacy kept Jermiah's jacket wrapped tight around her shoulders, holding on to that kindness like a lifeline. Jermiah pushed his clean plate away and leaned back, patting his full stomach. The open road could wait. Right now, something far more important needed tending. He studied Stacy over his coffee cup, then asked, thoughtful, "Child, you got somewhere to go when we leave here?" Stacy dabbed her lips with a paper napkin, her eyes fixed on the worn tabletop. A slow shake of her head was her only answer. Gently, "No family waiting for you?" Concerned, Jermiah pressed gently. Another silent shake, smaller this time. Jermiah let out a long breath, slow and steady as a summer breeze. He'd never been one for handing out promises. Life had shown him how easily words could blow away. But looking at this broken young woman across the table, something in his chest tugged harder than caution. "Well now," he said, his voice soft, "seems to me you've got somewhere to go after all." Stacy's head jerked up so fast a strand of hair escaped her braid. Her wide eyes shone with something between hope and fear, like a fawn spotting its first human. Now, don't go looking so surprised, Jermiah chuckled, rubbing his whiskery chin. I'm just an old truck driver who's seen a mile or two of life, but I know a good heart when I meet one. He reached across to pat her hand, his calloused fingers gentle. Ain't no need to solve your whole life tonight. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. That's enough for now. And then, Stacy smiled. Not a big smile, mind you, just a little quiver at the corners of her mouth. Jermiah didn't spoil the moment with chatter. He let her take her time with the last bites of pancake. When the waitress passed by, he pressed a folded 50 into her palm. Fetch us some of them spare blankets from the back, would you? And them thick wool socks I left by the coat rack last Tuesday. That first night, Stacy slept like the dead in the truck's small sleeper berth, bundled in blankets. Jermiah rested his forehead against the cool window glass, watching cars pass by on the highway. Words he hadn't spoken since childhood slipped from his lips like a secret. Lord, give this child another shot at happiness. As the days stretched into weeks, Jermiah watched Stacy. Jermiah wore out his phone battery, calling in favors from folks who remembered his kindness over the years. Bob the mechanic who'd needed bail money, Thompson's wife who still sent him Christmas fruitcakes, old Maya who ran the Gusto's diner where truckers swapped stories. Piece by piece, this patchwork family stitched together a safety net for Stacy. First came a clean bed at Mabel's boarding house. Nothing fancy, but the sheets smelled of lavender soap. Then work clothes from the church donation bin, washed and pressed crisp. Finally, honest work scraping plates at the diner. Every morning at 5 a.m. sharp, Stacy showed up with her hair braided neat and her sleeves rolled high, ready to work. Every evening, when the sun set, Jermiah's truck would rumble into the diner parking lot, right on schedule. He'd settle into his usual booth by the window, watching Stacy move between tables with her cleaning rag. The girl worked with quiet determination, her arms strong from scrubbing, her eyes brighter each day. I'll tell you what, Jermiah would say, stirring his coffee with a grin. You've got more grit than half the truckers I know. Stacy would pause, her laughter bubbling. That's because you're the only one, she'd reply. Whoever saw me as somebody worth saving. Day by day, she built herself anew. After her diner shifts, she'd walk to night school. Sundays found her at the homeless shelter for self-volunteering. Jermiah watched her spark catch fire. And through all her growing and giving, she never once forgot the man who'd stopped his rig for a broken girl in a tattered wedding dress. Seasons changed, trucks came and went, but Stacy never missed a chance to repay the kindness that saved her. Whether for Christmas, Thanksgiving, or just some random Tuesday, Stacy made sure his booth held three things: a steaming plate of his favorite meal, a hand-knit scarf, and a shiny new thermos to keep his coffee hot down those lonesome highways. But this wasn't just about saying thank you. With every stitch she knitted and every meal she served, Stacy was stitching herself back together too. On a rainy afternoon 2 years later, so like that first fateful night, Jermiah pulled into the diner lot to find something extraordinary. Twinkle lights glimmered in the windows, colorful balloons danced by the door, and there stood Stacy, no longer a shivering girl in a ruined wedding dress, but a proud woman in a crisp red dress, her hair braided neat, tears glistening in her eyes. Jermiah, before his boots even hit the pavement, she came running, that same desperate run from years ago, but now full of joy instead of fear. She nearly tackled him with her hug, laughing through happy tears. "I did it," she whispered fiercely. Jermiah held her at arm's length, his own eyes suspiciously damp. "Did what, kiddo?" "Graduated college, full scholarship. I'm going to be a social worker, help girls like I was, girls who need someone to believe in them." She put out all her emotions. Jermiah swiped at his cheeks with a work-rough hand. "Well, I'll be. That's my girl." His voice cracked like a teenage boy's. Then, before he could compose himself, Stacy reached into her pocket and produced a small, much-handled envelope, which read, "Thank you, Jermiah," or I should say, Dad. If you think this amazing story of Stacy and Jermiah deserves some love, Leave a thumbs up and share this story so it can reach every ear. Also tell us where you're watching from. We love to hear your thoughts and comments. Until then, stay blessed and stay kind.